Hello, welcome back to my channel, Madrona's Pulse Teachings. I am Iris, and I thought we could have a little chat about Pluto and Aquarius. Because I don't know about you, but the past few days have been a lot. There's a lot going on in various collectives, and it is all really manifesting Pluto and Aquarius. And it is showing us so much of how this massive shift is settling and also unsettling. And I also know that folks are really in it in different ways. And I thought what I would do is speak a little bit more generally about this energy because it is also different. It's different to talk about Pluto and Aquarius before we're in it versus to keep checking in. We need to keep checking in. We are in this for 20 years and we're in the massive kind of energy paradigm shift of Pluto having shifted into Aquarius from Capricorn, and we are starting to see it. And as we have more, this is the way that the cosmos, archetypal astrology, evolutionary astrology works, right? Is that we're in it and then we have transits. Like as I'm making this, we've just had the sun conjunct Pluto in Aquarius. That's a massive signature given that Pluto has just started its journey in Aquarius. So it's seeding and planting into our consciousness potentially an ability to see things that need to shift maybe rapidly. And also it's just new energy for us to journey with. So I thought I would speak about this energy a little bit more generally and then really actually come into some specific tips. And I will try to remember to put the timestamp down below for when I switch into more tips for focusing on it, but they're going to be interwoven because we do need specific tips for this. This is a new era. And this is only part of it because at the same time that we're adjusting to this massive shift, and Pluto and Aquarius is a massive shift in our psyches and bodies in the earth, we're also having Neptune prepare to make its move into Aries, which will then also sync up with Saturn and its move into Aries, and that's 2025 and 2026. So there's massive changes, okay? But let's focus on Pluto because Pluto is speaking. So first piece, Pluto comes into a sign. Pluto's function, its archetypal function is to make known what needs to be seen, especially in the fear-driven mode of that sign. So Pluto comes into Aquarius and it says, okay, you've been in Capricorn and we have been looking at the social systems that don't serve and the way that we as individuals appropriate into our sense of self and duty and success and professionalism ideas of kind of fear-driven Capricorn. This is what Pluto 16 years through Capricorn was about. And co-creating ways in societies, in our own lives, that we could see, okay, this system is collapsing. How is that also something in myself that's collapsing? And this is what Capricorn is helping us to do, and to really take back some agency, but it's specifically agency that we were disempowered from having within ourselves because of the way that we have been taught to think about ourselves in terms of really limited understandings of power, success, the purpose of life, what goals are all about, right? And that was part of the Pluto and Capricorn journey. Now Pluto's in Aquarius. Aquarius is very different energy. And so yes, Aquarius can be wonderful for the collective, for various collectives. It can be about the evolution of humanity through various collectives. It really is about becoming of service through my individual calling in a new way that serves collectives. Now, that said, Pluto's major function is to show us sometimes the perversion of that. The ways that we've embodied in Aquarius a sense of individualism for individualism's sake, rebellion for rebellion's sake, instead of it being about the actual embodiment and manifestation of justice and unity. It is about a perverse understanding of the individual call to action for a narcissist's understanding of the collective, which is a perversion of power that comes from the perversion of power in Capricorn. Okay, so Aquarius, when Aquarius is driven by fear, it is a fierce individual. It is the individual that dissociates from the actual felt and intuited interconnective web that we are all part of, right? And that's why a lot of times we talk about higher mind with Aquarius, and it is the way that Aquarius brings us in to what some people call higher mind. All different spiritual approaches are going to have different language for the way that we connect into the web of being. And that web of being is out of linear time. It is beyond life and death. It is in other realms. It is incredible. And it is also a really big shock to the system when we are stuck in a linear understanding of life and time and identity. And that's the Aquarius awakening. It's the lightning bolt. It's the awakening. And Aquarius is a sign of awakening. And Pluto coming into Aquarius is a new era of awakening. But that awakening, Pluto always involves a death. Pluto is death and rebirth. And so often there's this heightened energy when Pluto comes into a sign, and it exposes what needs to be seen. And that's going to happen in different collectives, in different communities. And as we see that, then we, on our journeys of individual self-inquiry, which is what astrology can be so incredible for, archetypal and evolutionary astrology and embodied astrology. We gotta have all the language so we don't run off into the shallowness that pop astrology, pop everything can bring us into. It's fun. Don't get me wrong, folks. It's fun. But I have made a living critiquing pop culture for a very long time. So there's issues, right? And so when we have this archetypal, evolutionary, embodied practice, that can also be life-saving and help us thrive. But it can be helpful to understand that there's a process going on. Okay, so however it's impacting you in your own life, emotionally, witnessing various collectives struggle, witnessing various institutions of power abuse their power, right? Know that there is something bigger happening and things are being exposed. And Pluto doesn't mess around. Pluto exposes, and also that exposure is part of a breakdown, and whether that's happening in collectives or it's happening in our own life. Okay, it's kind of like when we're in one of those seasons of shit is breaking down in our own life, and it's it doesn't matter if it's a relationship or work, or then we get up and the plumbing doesn't work, and then and it's and there's a part of us that knows. That knows this all is happening. And usually when it's happening like that, we do have a Pluto or Uranus transit going on. And it's part of the breakdown. And it's not the planets doing bad things to us. It's part of the co-creative emergence and archetypal resonance. And we do get through it. And we do move through it. And it does break down. And we do get, eventually, new plumbing, metaphorically and maybe literally, right? And so knowing that there's bigger processes underway, and when it's Aquarius, it is timelines, it is understandings of time that are so beyond what our ego wants, what our mind can comprehend in a purely cognitive way that's cut off from embodiment's wisdom and earth wisdom. And Aquarius literally takes us out of ordinary time and ordinary perception. So it is a wonderful time to meditate. Okay, let's switch into some of the tips that can really help us navigate this tectonic plate shifting, which means that our versions of reality are shifting. Welcome to 2025. Reality is shifting. So, working with Aquarius energy, meditation can be wonderful for Aquarius energy because Aquarius energy does, it's going beyond. Okay, so there's so many different types of meditation practices, whether you have a very kind of traditional mindfulness practice that comes out of a Buddhist tradition or kind of a more Western insight tradition, meditative journeying, meditative drumming, meditative walking. There's so many different types of practices, but whatever practices you have that help to get you out of the mind's incessant ruminating, the mind's drifting, out of the mind's autopilot, okay, keeping in mind that the technologies that most of us spend a lot of time in, our phones, are designed both through the platforms that they use and through the actual function of the technology itself to keep us in autopilot mode, to keep us in a thought wandering mode. So it's also a wonderful time to practice mindfulness with your use of technology as well. Because the more that we're feeding the mind into that kind of vicious loop, whether it's through scrolling that's also often usually inundating us with images that are not always helpful to our sense of self and the lives that we're trying to create, that often actually perpetuates sometimes even unconscious shaming, whether it's through body image that's represented, lifestyles, whatever it is, right? And we can try and craft and control our algorithm so that we're just getting what we want to see, but it is still a function of advertising, so it's still going to come through, right? And so being mindful about how we're using technology from a self-care perspective and not even going to all the cultural implications that a media studies prof likes to go into, right? It's really useful for the nervous system. So meditation, whatever meditative practices you have, Pluto in Aquarius, as much as yes, Pluto has that function and it is going to expose what needs to be seen, it's also an incredible era for awakening. And when Pluto exposes what needs to be seen, it's so that we can transform. It's so that we can say, okay, here is an example of that individual running wild with rebellion for rebellion's sake. I am going to reflect on myself. I am going to see the ways that at different points in my life, I might do that. If we have survived trauma, if we are continuing to survive trauma, if we are at the intersections of various oppressive marginalizations, it usually plants seeds to fight. And that fight is part of survival. And it can also pattern us to take over our life, and then we can spend so much time fighting that we can get exhausted and burn out and then realize, wow, I don't need to fight in the same way. Maybe my fight now can actually be radical self-care to live the most authentic life I want. And when I step back and pause, that might actually be a pretty quiet life. It might be reconnecting with myself, with the earth, with my higher self. And that type of reconnecting, it takes space and it takes time. And so doing that reflection, how have experiences in my own life led me to kind of have that rebellion for rebellion's sake? And how can I transmute that energy into where it feels best in my life now? Forming communities. Aquarius is about finding our pods, the various types of communities where we can be our authentic self. It's a wonderful time to find communities where you can connect through your spirituality, where you can connect through that kind of call to awaken, call to shed some of the shadowy individualist stuff that Western culture breeds into us from a very, very young age, from the media that we consume and the myths and the narratives. And really connect in communities. And you might try one and it might not be the right one, and that's okay. You're still learning something. You're learning why it's not the right one. You might try one and it might be great for a couple months and then it's not. You might try one and it might be great for the next 7 years and be a source of communion that holds you through your own transformations. But finding communities with Pluto and Aquarius, part of what Pluto and Aquarius is supporting. And so also reflecting on how, when we're witnessing things in the world, rather, we can have our days. We can have our days where we got to feel the feels, right? And not allowing the depression to take over and reaching for the communities, whether they are online, in person, whatever supports you, and just being open to it. And here, that's something you can just set intentions, use your rituals, light the candle and have a meditation and just invite certain communities coming to you. Is there some type of yearning that you have for connection? And that connection being a source from your most authentic self, because that is what Aquarius wants. When it's acting from fear, it is projecting this idea of an individual out into the world. And it can happen in ways that are violent. It can happen in ways that are violent emotionally, physically, right? Because it's fear driven. When Aquarius is moving from that balanced, healthy place, which doesn't mean all the fear is gone. Okay, this isn't an either or. Either or is usually a pretty unrealistic understanding. There can still be fear present. And that's what we're learning, because Pluto, of course, there's going to be fear present. Fear is part of Pluto's archetype. It's bringing it up. But the fear can also be shed so that we can see how the fear was protecting this earnest yearning for the authentic self. And at some point in life, we get taught it wasn't safe to share that with ourselves and with others. But now you're here in the age of Pluto and Aquarius, as humanity moves into the age of Aquarius. And it's time to shed that, and everything about what feels like authenticity for you, for yourself, reflecting on the ways that you might have been taught to perform, the way that part of getting the work that you have involves performing, and peeling back the layers and trying to show up more authentically as best you can. And part of what's going to help that is finding communities where we can show up authentically. And what do you know? We find those communities where we're not performing, where we're able to be our authentic selves, where we're able to form connections and be interconnected, experiencing life in our raw, vulnerable moments in community. And it starts rippling out. And those communities start interacting with other communities. And other communities start interacting with other communities. And before you know it, we have a bottom-up paradigm change that is healthy and able to emerge out of the rubble of what's been breaking down. Focus on what's underneath the rubble, the societal rubble, by finding your communities, leaning into them, letting it be the wrong one and then trying another, letting it be the right one day and not that day, because we are moody individuals. Pluto is moody. Pluto is moody in the core of our unconscious. We cannot control it. Okay? So really meditation, whatever awakening calls to you of mindfulness with technology, especially Uranus is going to go into Gemini this summer and or winter if you're in the southern hemisphere. And Uranus is related to Aquarius. We've got two big energies in air energy. So as much as that is awakening insights, communication, it is shocks to the nervous system. And it is an overabundance of information. And so the more that you can start out now with those practices that are becoming pretty rigorously mindful, potentially, of the media that we let into our psyche and how we use technology, and setting those kind of mindful habits could be really, really supportive. Looking for the communities, practicing meeting and falling in love with your authentic self and allowing her, him, or them to change. That's the thing. I know I always mention this, but that's the thing about when like an influencer uses authenticity as their brand. True authenticity changes, which means your brand gonna have to change, and your publishing team ain't gonna like that. Your publicity team, no, it's got to stay the same, right? Raw authenticity changes because, especially when we're working with Aquarius, it's air energy. New insights come. Well, I got to let that go. That's why Aquarius itself is a push and pull of alienation and belonging, right? It yearns for the pod, and yet the drive to evolve does not stop. And so at some point, my evolution might be that I need to go spend time with a different pod. And that can be part of the archetypal pull, right? But allowing, calling in, setting intentions, doing astro witchy prayers and spells, right? Around finding pods and really taking care of the nervous system and really inviting, some of the unpacking of some of the toxic lessons about the individual. Individualism has been part of a propaganda in Western media for a really long time, and it perpetuates a static matrix of power. And so astrology is lovely because it shows us why, yes, I am on this unique journey. This is my natal chart. And it also shows us why we're always co-creating and we're always part of something bigger than us. And that's where the final stage of Neptune through Pisces is beautiful for the energy of surrendering. And I like to try and keep these around 20 minutes, and we are broaching above that. So I'm going to leave it there with this Pluto in Aquarius check-in. As always, I am sending a lot of love, and I'm especially sending love for you in the ongoing journey of falling in love with your raw, authentic selves. And that's lovely, is to make it plural. And I could talk all about our plural selves, because I wrote a book about that, but I'm going to stop, and that's a different video. Okay, be well, and blessings.